Good morning. Who do we have on the line?
It's Mark.
Hey, Commissioner. We're a few minutes out from starting the meeting, but you are live in the room.
Okay. Let me.
Do you feel like you're drinking milk?
Or something. Yeah, I'm with you. Oh yeah,
Cookie still? Don't have anything to do with it. I can do this.
Good morning. Who just joined?
Good morning. This is Glenn.
Hi, Glenn. We have a few minutes before we start the meeting, but you are live in the room.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Is that Mr. Tollison that just joined?
Good morning. How's everybody?
Good, how are you? We are
Doing great.
close to starting the meeting, but you are live in the room.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Showing 9:32. All right, it's 9:32 a.m., so I'm going to call the meeting to order. And first thing we need to do is call a roll.
Sir. Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.,
Here.
Mr. Bob Kruger,
Here.
Mr. Bill Gross,
Here.
Commissioner Mark Williams,
Here.
Miss Joy Birchmeeks will be absent today, Mr. Tripp Tollison,
Here.
Dr. Buster Evans will most likely be absent today, Mr. Glenn Willard,
Here.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Here.
Sir, you have a quorum.
Great, thank you. And we are underway. I will, you've called the roll. Let's see, there were 3 public comments received online for this meeting. I'll read the names and subjects into the record. Steve Smith, Golf Master Plan. John Stevenson, Financials, Bike Paths, and Parking Passes. And Mindy Egan, 2021 Master Plan Update, and Citizens Resource Council. And I'm going to start with the Historic Preservation and Conservation Committee. Mr. Atkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This time I will call on Ray Emerson to be followed by Cliff to give our report.
Thank you.
Members of the board, folks here in the audience, good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you again. I want to talk to you today about a new program that has begun in the Conservation Department. It is called our Junior Ranger After School Program, but first a bit of a history lesson. A couple of years ago, as I was here before you presenting the Junior Ranger Field Guide, a book that was a 14-month effort by a collaboration from the Conservation Department, Georgia Sea Turtle Center, Historic Preservation and Marketing. A fun little learning tool for kids to learn about the environment and Jekyll Island. One of our park rangers wanted to take this guide a little bit further, and Park Ranger Erin Moline designed a program for after-school field trips for kids, and then she built a partnership with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Glynn County to bring kids over here to go on field trips with park rangers 3 days a week after school. Unfortunately, we dealt with COVID and we had to press pause on the program, but this past November, we pressed play. And there are 15 Boys and Girls Clubs in Glynn County, and 1 club per week brings 12 to 15 members over here Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday after school, outside of school vacation weeks, to go on guided field trips with the ranger centered around our guide. So on Tuesdays, we start off in the marsh. On Wednesdays, we visit the forest. And on Thursdays, we wrap up at the beach. So our rangers guide these kids through these areas. They complete the activities in the Junior Ranger Field Guide. And then at the end of the week, we have kind of a little graduation ceremony at the beach. They recite the Junior Ranger Pledge. And they receive their stickers and certificate that designates them as a Jekyll Island Junior Ranger. So it's a really great program for the kids, and especially for us. We can present Jekyll Island and Mother Nature to them through our eyes, but we get to see the same thing through theirs. And if you take a look at the young lady in the lower right corner of this slide, you'll see that reaction, having seen a bald eagle on its nest for the very first time, which is really, really cool. So this has been a great program, and what I'm most proud about is that this is facilitated by the park rangers on my team. And it occurred to me when I was making this presentation that you only get to, or you actually have to look at me when I give these presentations about the park ranger team, but I want you to meet my team. So, Park Ranger Erin Moline. Next is Park Ranger Andrea Deck. And last and certainly not least, Park Ranger Alexia Darnell. What is truly remarkable about these three rangers is that they joined us as seasonal park rangers, Aaron in 2019, Andrea and Alexia in 2021. So seasonal park rangers, a temporary position. They join us in the spring, and they wrap up around Labor Day. These three young ladies did such an outstanding job in their first season with us that they were offered and accepted permanent positions as park rangers within the Conservation Department, and we are extremely proud of them. So moving on from the Junior Ranger Field Guide, I want to talk to you about bald eagle nesting before I close. So as you may know, we do have two active bald eagle nests here on Jekyll Island, one on the Crane Road bike path, kind of behind Circle K and Dairy Queen, and then one at Driftwood Beach. Our Crane Road path is a very productive nest. We've known about it for about 7 years. It has successfully fledged at least one eaglet every year. As a matter of fact, has fledged 2 eaglets the last 3 out of 4 years. Now, what's very interesting for us is our Driftwood Beach nest, which is a much newer nest. We had never seen any successful breeding there until last year, and that pair fledged successfully an eaglet this past spring. So we are right now in the middle of nesting, and we are always very interested in what's going on at our nests. Park Ranger Alexia Darnell confirmed the presence of at least one eaglet in the Crane Road bike path nest this past weekend. And then one of our volunteers, Carol Ann Wages, who is here with us today, is a very patient and persistent photographer, and she went up to Driftwood Beach last week and took some pictures of this nest. This is one of the pictures she submitted to me, just a stunning picture of an adult eagle on its nest. But if you look very, very closely, you'll see that there is an eaglet in that nest, which is really cool because we now have back-to-back successful hatches up at Driftwood Beach. But Carol Ann, again, as I said, is very persistent, so she went back up there last week, a different day, and had her camera with her, and she confirmed not one, but, my other slide didn't go in there, sorry. She confirmed not one, but 2 eaglets in that nest. So we are very excited to have 2 eaglets at that nest. We hope that the Crane Road path nest will remain true to form and fledge 2 more this year as well. So for the first time that we have ever known, we may produce 4 successful eaglets on Jekyll Island this year. So, ladies and gentlemen, I can't think of a better way to end a presentation than with baby eagles. And I appreciate your time today, and our entire Park Ranger team is here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank them as well. Oh, how neat. And Dale, here. Let's.
Cliff.
I thought we had.
Morning,
Mr.
gentlemen.
Atkins, before you go to the
Ladies.
next program, I just want to affirm what an outstanding job Ray and his team do. I think you realize that, and obviously members of the public in the audience have too. And I should say that not only do they have these wonderful educational programs, but they're also responsible for being on the beach. And that's an educational program in and of itself, of a entirely different nature. And they do a great job in trying to make certain that guests feel welcome, but also that guests understand the rules and why some of the policies are in place. So, Ray, thank you and your team very much. We appreciate what you do.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. This morning I'm going to discuss an area of our former special protection area, what is best described today in our conservation plan as the conservation protection area, how it associates with villas by the sea. In this area, which was just off of leased property next to the ocean, there was originally an area that consisted mostly of maritime forests as well as scrub vegetation. After the 2 ensuing hurricanes, and especially after Hurricane Irma, a good portion of it was wiped out. Right after a revetment project was being underway, there was communication with both the conservation folks, with the Jekyll Island Authority, as well as Villas by the Sea management about how we would handle this area again. And very early on, there was a definite strong commitment by Dick Coyle, their general manager, about restoring this habitat. Now, a portion of it, as I described, was in natural vegetation, maritime forest and scrub habitat, but also a portion of the non-leased property over time had been migrated into active use area. It had basically been converted into lawn area, turf area, as well as even a small wedding pavilion was erected on a component of this. As for the actual plans that were to be set forth, Dick Coyle and his members hired Land Design to come up with an initial design for it. But when we looked at this design with them, we noticed the spacing and some of the plant materials that were being used probably would not suffice to restore this habitat. So we offered as a part of to help with restoring this in a little more sensitive way, that we utilized our landscape architecture intern, Ms. Krista Campalong, to look at the plan again. And then also, as part of this, we volunteered to utilize our greenhouses to grow the exact ecotype for their plant materials and sell them at a modest cost to them for that plan. Also with that, we had a commitment that I would lay out all the plans for them after we delivered them to on site. And then a private contractor that they would hire would install the plant material. And all in all, in this area that was comprised, there was over 1,000 plants that were planted on it. They consisted mostly of clump-forming grasses, of most of our native grasses, but also some shrubs. Of all the plants that we did provide for them, we only brokered 2 species. One was the green saw palmetto, and the other was cabbage palm. There was an issue, especially getting permits as well as the disruption. They wanted to put some cabbage palms in, but to put them in this location that was pretty sensitive, you'd need heavy equipment. But luckily, dealing with some of my brokers that I had for plants, calling around, I found one of them in Glen St. Mary, Florida, that actually had grown 100 1-gallon, 3-gallon cabbage palm plants. Never see them in containers normally. They were grown for a special contractor, but unfortunately that person went belly up. He was kind of stuck with the plants, and we graciously took him off his hands. But on a personal note regarding this area, many of you know I started here as an intern in 1991. One of my first jobs was to basically survey and diagnose areas where there were illegal clearings on the site by previous owners. Over that time, there was a lot of conversation about areas where they had encroached on the leased area with Villas by the Sea, and there was just not much commitment at all. But I would personally like to say, and same with Ben Carswell too, not only the Property Owners Association, but Dick Coyle, how appreciative I am personally to see that the leadership they took to restore this habitat back. And I think the efforts that Villas by the Sea put into this serve as a personal model for any other leaseholder to follow, to take areas where the special protection area or conservation protection area has been encroached upon and to sensibly restore it back into a viable and natural environment for all of us to really appreciate. Just in conclusion too, I'd also like to say that the Villas by the Sea collectively, with the plant materials that they purchased from the authority, the contractors, as well as the work that was done by Land Design, they made a commitment of over $20,000 to restoring this habitat. Thank you to Villas by the Sea.
Thank you. Anything else?
Cliff, before you ask for questions or comments, I don't know if, I think it would be good for board members to actually see Dick. Dick, if you could stand, Dick Coyle, who's the general manager of Villas by the Sea. And also, there are several resident owners with Dick today from Villas. If they would stand, we would, I think we're extremely grateful to you for your participation in this project. Obviously, it will make a big difference.
He actually was very instrumental in assisting with this project. He's on the board of directors. His wife, Jan Thompson, on the board, and Mike Carey, the former board member at the village.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you,
Cliff,
thank you.
any other questions or comments from the board? Mr. Chairman, that concludes our report.
Okay, we will now open the floor for any public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person, and appreciate it if you tell us who you are. We don't have any? All righty, thank you all so much. I'm going to move to the Finance Committee and Bill Gross, and I'll let Mr. Gross open the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, we're the beneficiaries is living in a great place. The weather has been great this winter and fall and winter. So we'll start off with the December financial State of the Union. Revenues for December were $2,684,143, which was $494,000 better than budget for the month. Year-to-date revenues reflect a favorable $3.4 million variance from budget and a favorable $4.8 million variance from prior year to date. The largest locations with the largest variances from budget were the business lease revenues, which were $77,000 higher than budget. Businesses as well as the hotels continue to produce revenues that are higher than anticipated. Parking revenues were $132,000 more than budget. Annual pass sales were $20,000 more than budget. Daily parking fees $111 more than budget. Campground revenues were $56,000 better than budget for December. 6 months into the fiscal year, campground revenues have exceeded the year's to-date budget by $298,000. While the museum revenues are on target with budget this month, I would like to point out that the Holly Jolly Light Tours and the Holly Jolly Trading Post did extremely well this month. Due to a timing issue, revenues from the light tours not be reflected until the January financials. Expenses for December were $1,899,351, which is $138,000 or 7% less than budget for the month. Year-to-date expenses were $1.2 million less than budget and were $1.9 million more than prior year-to-date expenses. The largest variances for the month were human resources, which was $76,000 lower due to vacant positions, both full-time and part-time. Insurance contracts and advertising sales categories were all significantly less than budget for the month. They're due to some timing issues and are expected to be spent by the end of the fiscal year. Net operating cash income for December is $784,791, which is $633,000 better than the budget net operating income of $152,188. Year-to-date, net operating cash income was $4.6 million better than budget and $3 million better than prior year-to-date income. December traffic stats.
Mr. Gross?
Yes, sir.
Before you go into traffic, Mr. Kruger, at all Finance Committee meetings, when we're looking at the budget each year, he usually, if the budget is at all out of line, he accuses me of sandbagging. And he and I had a conversation about this, and he is convinced that this year it is just a surprise budget, that the revenues being what they are and have definitely been a surprise. And obviously, some unpleasant surprise is the fact that we've not been able to fill all of our positions, and so we've had savings in personnel. But it is a surprise budget, and Mr. Kruger, not to put you on the spot, but any comments regarding that? I hope not, but...
Well, Jones, I cannot let it go unchallenged.
I figured that would be the case, sir.
And while I said that, I think if I were to revise my statement, I would say that there's certainly sandbagging in the budget, no doubt about it, but this certainly exceeded what normally we see as sandbagging. So I will concede your unexplained surplus here.
Maybe contingency planning is a more appropriate word, but...
I think Mr. Kruger would probably prefer sandbagging.
But thank you. I mean, we have enjoyed limited storms and bad weather, which is a big part of it. Of course, staff is working incredibly hard, and it's been a great place for people to enjoy. So let's see, the traffic stats. Total traffic count for December was 103,165 vehicles, which was about 4,900 less vehicles or fewer than December of 2020. Year-to-date traffic count is 1,452,244, which was 295,000 more vehicles than prior calendar year-to-date. As a comparison to pre-pandemic numbers, our year-to-date traffic counts are 213,000 more than 2019 traffic counts. Hotel stats. Revenues reported by the hotels were $3.7 million, which is $1.9 million more than December of 2020. This is a 98.6% increase in revenues. Occupancy rate was 52.5%, which is up from 39.5%. Revenue per available room, $90.81, which is up from $56.24 in December of 2020. Average daily rate was $173.09, which is up from $142.32. Calendar year 2021, year-to-date revenues reported by the hotels, $61 million, which is $24.2 million more than year-to-date 2020. Occupancy rate was 65.4%, which is up from 55.5%. Revenues per available room was $134.40, which is up from $93.98 year-to-date 2020. Average daily rate was $205.37, which is up from $169.19. That's the December financials. Next, I'd like to go ahead and ask Marjorie, our Chief Accounting Officer, to bring us the fiscal year 2022 budget adjustment. Thank you, Marjorie.
Good morning. So as Mr. Gross was saying, we are doing really well for this fiscal year, and even though the pandemic is still going on, we feel very comfortable asking for a couple of budget adjustments and some capital improvements from those funds. The first request is a budget adjustment in the amount of $328,892.79. And those budget adjustments include some tree work on the golf course, an update of the National Golf Foundation study, schematic designs for the Sea Turtle Center expansion, marketing analysis for the amphitheater, landscaping improvements, and several repairs. And those would be funded from the surplus from this year's current financials. So I'll be glad to ask any questions about specific projects on that. And if there aren't any, then we would like to request approval of $328,892.79 in budget adjustments for the year.
Is there a motion to recommend the approval of the fiscal year 2022 operating budget adjustment as recommended by staff?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Okay, sorry.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, Marjorie.
Okay. The next request is for some capital equipment and projects. The first, it's actually in three parts. So the first part of it would be to use current year operating funds to fund projects in the total of $856,900. And those would include new cameras at Summer Waves, replacement of current cameras at our other amenities, improvements to the annex building, landscaping improvements, site prep work for the public safety building, new cabanas for the Summer Waves, and a few pieces of equipment. The second portion of that is funding from the Water Wastewater Improvement Fund. And that would be for 4 new pumps at the wastewater treatment plant for $42,000 and the replacement of 600 water meters for $150,000. And the final portion of that request would be to request approval for funding of 2 more sections of the bike paths. Section I is expected to cost $483,000, and Section G is expected to cost $126,000. And those would be funded from the Tourism Development Fund. And the way we would like to fund that is we had asked for $234,000 in August to fund the Causeway Bike Path. We would like to reallocate those funds to these 2 new projects and then request an additional $375,000 from the Tourism Development Fund. We feel like that project probably, since it was delayed, we would be better off taking that money and using it toward projects we can finish in a more timely manner. So.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, let me add to Marjorie's discussion of that. That project is delayed from the standpoint from our perspective, not from the Federal Department of Transportation perspective. Mm-hmm. They feel like they are making great progress, but when we're on conference calls with them, we're extremely frustrated by the manner in which they are proceeding. They've had some surveying done on the causeway, and they feel very confident that we'll see construction out there within the next 3 years. Well, we had asked you earlier to go ahead and put these monies in there in addition to the match that we required for this various engineering studies, because we assumed that things would move forward much quicker because of the fact that there has that project was started, as you know, and that's that bike path to nowhere right now. So if I sound a little frustrated, I am just in dealing with that whole project. But we think this makes a lot more sense to, instead of just having those funds sit there, to move them, and then whenever they're more, it's more appropriate from a timing standpoint, then we would look to fund that the remainder of that project. We've made such good progress with the bike path rejuvenation projects, and this map is the one that you've seen previously, except that it highlights in the 2 yellow circles the 2 areas that Marjorie's talking about. And so what this will do is it will mean that all of the bike paths from the north to the south will have been rejuvenated, and then the south loop completed, as you know from earlier. And the only section remaining to be done is the Clam Creek marsh area. And as you know, we've talked about that previously. That is going to be a major project with some major permitting issues. And so we on purpose have waited on that one. And there's also been a lot of environmental issues as far as every storm that comes through shifts the sands up there and kind of where things would have to be. So as far as a new path. But anyway, this graphic shows you all of the bike paths and how this money would end up being allocated.
I'd like to point out that the budget request that Marjorie's presented is really a cross-section that helps in multiple different efforts that we've got, from sustainability of the island, the enjoyment and the utilization of the bike trails by both the residents and guests, as well as the operating efficiency and sustainability of the operations of the water department. So, and being able to detect water leakage with the new meters. So I think it's a great reinvestment in Jekyll to just help not only the experience, but just in the sustainability part of the island. So good job on your budget request. Having said that, is there a motion to recommend the approval of the 2022 capital equipment and projects request as recommended by Marjorie?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that is that completes the Finance Committee report.
Thank you. And we move to public comments. Open the floor for any public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person, and please let us know where you're from. Are there any comments? Chair hears none, so we will move ahead. There's no report on human resources. The marketing committee, Joy is not here. Kevin, I think you're going to fill in on that one.
All right. Morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. Little update here on the state of affairs here at the center. First slide here is basically how did we recover from the best year we ever had on record, which was calendar year 19. And so we just finished 21. And right off the bat, our leads were down just a little bit from the best year, again, on record 2019. So we felt very good about that. That's filling up the pipeline. And then the actual definite groups here, we had 70 versus 86. So we weren't really far off the pace there. And then the definite tentative conversion in 2021 calendar was 166 groups for 107,000 room nights for our hotel partners. So there was a nice influx of continued business in calendar 21. And in 2019, we were at 183 versus, again, 166. So we're just off that pace of a very strong year before the pandemic. And the biggest thing to note here is in Q1, Q2 in 2019, we had 28 events in the center. In 2021, we only had 10 because we forget how everything had canceled really until almost mid-year, until we had the GOP conference was almost the big first group there in June. So it was a slow climb out, but a very successful end of year. And then as just 21 by itself, we had 70 groups here for 43,000 hotel rooms that we helped drive to the island. And based on our normal ADR, it was about 8.6 million in direct hotel revenue. And we still convert at about a 30% rate from leads to definite, which is very strong. I think when people come here and we do the site tours and they see this amazing island, it makes it a lot easier to convert to a definite. We always like to keep an update on all-time future bookings. We have 154 leads out there right now in the system for about 82,000 attendees that would be here in the center. And we've got already on the books 166 definite/tentative groups between now and, let's say, 2030. So our calendar has got a lot of strength in it for the next several years. Looking very good that way. It's about 21 million in current ADR that's already on the books right now for the island partners. The 22 calendar outlook, we have 15 leads out there right now. We've already got 75 definite groups here for about 40,000 attendees. Again, about 54,000 hotel rooms this year coming up. About $11 million in hotel revenue. So again, 22 looks very strong for the island. One group for one market that's really gone up is the Hindu weddings, the traditional Indian weddings have seen a 100% increase. We went from, actually more than that, we went from about 3 to 7 or 8, and they love to take holiday weekends, which we typically cannot sell, so it's a really nice fit. And they really duplicate a convention. You'll have 300 to 600 attendees, and they'll spend $80,000, $100,000 in the center, and they fill up several hotel rooms. So it's a really great market for this island. So we just love having them here. So again, we're continuing the trend of booking out the existing groups. That's another big thing we're seeing is we used to have a lot more leads coming in the door from new people, and now what we're seeing is the people, once they get here, the groups, they don't want to leave. So they'll come back to us after the meetings, luckily, usually, and say, what about 23? What about 24, 5, 6? So we're seeing a tremendous increase in our annual groups. We've increased our book of annual groups, where we used to rely more on the new business. We're still going after the new business, of course, but it is a nice trend to see people, once they come here, their attendees usually drive that decision. They say, we don't want to go to wherever it is, one of our competitive set. So they love being here, and we're, with everything done on the island the way it is. And then for future business, this was a nice one. For the first half of fiscal 22, from July until, we just did it to the, right at the end of December, we matched the best year on record as far as definite tentative groups that booked. We had 92 groups that between July 1st and December 31st that booked, and that tied the all-time best record we've ever had. So again, I think there was a big demand and push outside of that after the post-pandemic to come back to this island. So we're very proud of that. That was a nice one. And we mentioned the total definite and future business. And again, just to highlight, the groups are transitioning to multiple year contracts. And so, unless we have another strain of this thing, we seem to be in very solid footing. We've kind of expanded our book of business. Our market segments have expanded. A little bit more of the educational and the government groups are coming here, a lot with Carl Vincent. Again, what I would not consider an A piece of business, weddings, but these weddings that we're seeing are A business. They're almost tier 1 business. So we're kind of leveling out the book of business here in the center. I believe that's it. Yes. So all in all, things are very, very good, and they continue to be strong. So enjoy any questions you have. Anything? Okay. All right.
Then, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And what great news. We'll open the floor for any public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person, and please let us know where you're from. Do we have any comments? Okay. I have the legislative committee on the list, and of course, legislative session is underway now.
And I believe Mr. Tollison is on the phone, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Just a quick comment. We've had 4 legislative days that they've been in session in Atlanta. Of course, the governor gave a state address last week. Between Jones and I and the rest of the board members, staff will be watching, making sure that if anything comes up with Jekyll, we'll be responsive and ready. Jones, do you have anything to add? I know that there's some appropriations requests, but I did not see in the governor's budget, but we'll continue to monitor that and proceed with the assembly. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yes, sir. We were disappointed that the budget, proposed budget, doesn't include the requested amount for the public safety facility on Jekyll. However, back in November, I had discussions, as you know, Mr. Tollison, with the chairman of the House and Senate Appropriations Committees regarding this project. And so this afternoon, we'll begin discussing with their staff the real need for including funding for this project within the budget this year. So we'll definitely be, you and I'll be talking further about that as we have in the past. But I suppose the point would be just stay tuned. As we just had considered in the Finance Committee, we're continuing to move forward with the public safety project, and as a result of the board action today, we'll actually be able to go ahead and begin to do the clearing that is necessary for the facility. So everything we're doing is in anticipation of that project being funded in some manner. Just not as easy as maybe we would have liked, Mr. Tollison.
Well, thank you for that. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. Any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Great, thank you. I do like to do public comments limited to 3 minutes for each person, and again, just let us know where you're from. All right, we don't have any. Going to the committee of the whole, and which I will chair. I'd like to do a roll call again to see who we've got.
Just for those on the line?
Everyone.
Mr. Joseph B. Wilkerson Jr.
Here.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Here.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Here.
Commissioner Mark Williams.
Here.
Mr. Trip Tollison.
Here.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Here.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Here.
Ms. Joy Birch Meeks and Dr. Buster Evans will be absent.
Thank you. I want to go to the consideration of market analysis for Jekyll Island Buccaneer site. Jones?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, you'll recall that we received a presentation a couple of months ago from RCLCO consulting group, which was retained by the lease owners as required by the JIA to look at the best use for this property. You have seen the earlier study. You received a copy of it. After the study was released publicly and to you, we had some questions about the study in light of the pandemic and the fact that over time numbers had shifted some. And so just a quick highlight here before I ask Maria Humphrey, who's at the podium and who is our lease manager, to go into some specific details with you as far as process. If you'll look in your packets at draft page 30, that particular page talks about carrying capacity and infrastructure considerations of the proposed project. And it breaks down the project into possibilities of if it were to be a hospitality project, i.e. a hotel type project, or a residential project. And the residential project would be less impact, softer impacts as far as carrying capacity of the island and traffic and numbers and that sort of thing. So I call that page to your attention. I also call to your attention a page that was changed. It's draft page number 47. And that was as a result of the pandemic. We saw numbers on Jekyll Island that were more of a V recovery than had been outlined in the earlier RCLCO study. The expectations were a flatter return over time, and obviously on Jekyll we saw more of a V response, and I think that's worthy of your review. Also, I think it's important for you to know or to note that one of the findings, of the key findings in the study, was that about 40 units were all of the additional lodging units, as far as motel units, that RCLCO felt that would be justified at the present time on Jekyll Island. And so the bottom line is that this particular study recommended a residential use. And so today we are bringing this back to your attention because your consideration is the beginning of a process. And Maria's going to talk about a little bit of history here and also this process. Maria?
Yeah, so when LNWA acquired this lease from Trammell Crow, if you remember, that happened back in 2015. These parcels originally totaled 15.4 acres. It's the Ocean Oak site, the Courtyard site, and then the Buccaneer site that's yet to be developed. They did a little bit of rearranging of the properties, and combined some parcels to make the parcel that we're talking about now, which is the 6.892 acres. Originally, Trammell Crow had a plan before LNWA took it over to build 3 4-story hotels on the parcels, which would have totaled 526 units. So we're real happy that didn't happen. LNWA has had this property for all of this time since they took it over in 2015 with a carrying cost for just lease payments of $1.27 million. So they've sat on it for quite a while and haven't realized anything back from it. So they're pretty anxious to go ahead and do something with this parcel. They have also given back to the authority 2.77 acres on these parcels and another 1.95 back at Ocean Oaks for a total of 4.7 acres. So they didn't develop as much of the acreage as they had originally wanted to. So that's a good thing also. So the marketing study was put into the lease when we redid the lease with them in 2017. We required that a marketing study be done because the original permitted use was just for a hotel. And we didn't know, based on the carrying capacity of the island study, whether a hotel or residential would be a better use of the property. So we were going to require that once we felt the impact of the courtyard had been realized. So now that the courtyard has been built and they've done this study, we're asking that the study be approved so that the permitted use can be made into the lease.
So I'm going to need a motion.
I think that pretty much covers it. The only other thing is that in the lease, there is a requirement that within 60 days of your approval of this study, if you decide to approve it, we'll need to come up with a project development agreement with LNWA as to how the project will proceed from here. So that requirement's in there.
And then that would be presented at one of your board meetings. It would be always appearing in public.
So we need a motion approving the market analysis. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there a motion to recommend approving the market analysis completed by RCLCO for the Jekyll Island Buccaneer site? Is there a motion? We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. To recommend approving the market analysis completed by RCLCO for the Jekyll Island Buccaneer site. Any discussion?
How many residential units are we talking about potentially there?
We don't
I've seen the
have-
number and it just,
Yeah, we don't have anything from them yet as to the density or the amount of units, but that would be part of the project development agreement is going to have hopefully some details as to what their planned use is. We're not approving any specific planned use or anything. We're just approving the marketing study today, that we're in agreement with accepting the marketing study.
Okay. Any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. The, Jones, I now have going to you on the RFP 368.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. You will all realize now why we, in Marjorie's report and in the Finance Committee, we had a request for a couple of projects under administration, and they're both analyses or studies. And one is Amphitheater marketing analysis, and you just approved up to $50,000 for this particular study. And this is a request for proposal that you've that has not been issued lately. This is for you to approve for us to move forward with this. Giving you a little background, you may recall that in April of last year, we actually, you approved an RFP that we issued with, actually it was on a rolling basis, which means it had no end date, for us to receive proposals from potential developer/operators for improvements and partnership at the historic or the old amphitheater. We received some cursory inquiries, but nothing serious. And so then I came back to you in September of last year and asked that we reissue that RFP with a specific deadline date. So you approved an RFP to be reissued with a few minor changes, as well as the with a deadline date on September the 22nd. Following issue of that RFP, we received one response, but it was not totally or technically responsive to the RFP as it had been issued. So we have had lots of internal discussions and external discussions with people who are familiar with amphitheaters and their operation, and we have looked at why we're not further along with where we want to be than we are. And what we think is that it would be very helpful for us to have a marketing analysis conducted by a professional group, I suppose similar to the fact that we just had a marketing analysis that you reviewed for the Buccaneer site, that would then allow us to use that basically as information that would be not only information for us to have and for you to understand more about the opportunities of what may be required for you as a board to undertake in partnership at the amphitheater, but also for us to use that information in a promotional kind of situation as far as promoting possibilities to groups who may have the expertise to actually partner with us in the development, or who may have the partnership to do it all on their own and then to even operate the amphitheater. So this particular RFP we have developed, and it's if you look at draft page 73. You'll see the proposed requirements and actually looking at some ideas that are a little different in that, yes, we would like to have an activated amphitheater, but also that space is very attractive from an enjoyment park-like atmosphere. Now that there's a rookery that has developed over time as a result of the lake that was dug actually in creating the amphitheater. And so we think that there may be some possibilities that it would operate in a similar fashion to like Great Dunes Beach Pavilion, which is open to the public most of the time, and then whenever a private event is going to be held, that space can be booked through the convention center for the private event. But most of the time it is open to the public. So we think that is kind of a hybrid model that should be explored and looked at. We want to hear more about operational requirements as far as event and venue expectations and restrictions. We want to look at, have the consulting group look at financial considerations, including a rudimentary pro forma for us. And then post-construction needs that would look at facilities that would be required, and looking at the parking that is there, as well as obviously the old restrooms that are there. All of that would have to be redone. So anyway, this This is what this particular proposal is. It's a market analysis for the amphitheater to do a deeper dive into the operation, and even including looking at regional amphitheaters that would either lend opportunity to us or lend maybe some mentorship to us, not necessarily competitiveness because of the distance there. There would be a deadline of March the 1st for receipts of proposals. If you look on draft page 74, there's a complete schedule of the event, and if you were to approve this to move forward, then you would see the schedule that we are proposing, with hopefully coming back to you with a notice to proceed April the 15th. So that's an explanation, Mr. Chairman, of the proposal.
Thank you for that assistance. We're going to require a motion. Is there a motion to recommend approval of RFP 368 for the Jekyll Island Amphitheater market analysis as recommended by staff? Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we have a motion to recommend approval of RFP 368. Any discussion? Chair hears none. You know, I'm going to ask for a roll call on this, please.
Sure, absolutely.
We'll vote, but I want to do a roll call, please.
Okay. Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams.
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tollison.
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Aye.
Sir, it's unanimous.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries. The next item I want to discuss is the National Golf Foundation assessment update. Jones, you've been following it.
Yes, sir. Here again, another item that was included in the operating budget adjustments, up to $25,000 for a National Golf Foundation update. And you'll see in your packets a scope of service outlined from the National Golf Foundation Consulting Group. If you recall, we used the National Golf Foundation Consulting Group back in 2017 to begin the process of looking at golf course improvements. And actually, they have been involved all along, even when the Vincent Group was coming forward with their proposals as far as golf course master plan was concerned. Back in October of 2020, actually after the Vincent Group proposal was submitted in September of 2020, I had contacted the National Golf Foundation to ask them if they would be interested in doing an update for us and a review for us of their proposal, as well as how it would interface with the Vincent proposal. And so they were interested, but then we were involved by that time in the Island Master Plan update. And so as you know, we began also deeper dives into certain issues and components of the proposed improvements to the golf courses. And so we had not moved in a direction of having an update from the National Golf Foundation. The National Golf Foundation, one of the things that they do, of course, is they monitor golf trends and occurrences across the country. And they have done some studies during the pandemic that have looked at the number of playable hours the playability of different course arrangements, such as par 3 courses versus others, and done a lot of surveying during the pandemic. So when we talked with them the other day about resurrecting this assessment, they were very interested because they felt like that that enough time had passed, not only since 2017 when they had originally made some of their recommendations, but also then with some of the new information that we have, not only from the Vincent Group, but some of the deeper dives that we did, that they felt like that there was good information that they would like to become involved in an assessment. Another thing that they brought forward whenever we were talking with them the other day was the fact that there are several recommendations that they had made that we have been pursuing, and that they feel like that is information that needs to be updated. So just like that we just updated or had the consultants with the RCLCO study update, we think that in a bigger on a bigger issue, that to have the National Golf Foundation do an update for us. When we talked to them the other day, we would basically have the same group of consultants as were here before, so it's not like that they would have to start over or reinvent the wheel. Instead, they are very familiar with Jekyll. They have been following what's been transpiring, and they have also had several discussions, I understand, with the Vincent Group. So our proposal is that we enter into an update analysis with the National Golf Foundation for them to look at an assessment here. It would, we're not talking about a long, protracted engagement, but we're talking 60 days. And so I think it would be money well spent. Their estimated cost is $18,000 plus their expenses. They would actually come and do a presentation of their findings at a board meeting publicly. And so I think it would be money well spent at this point. So that's the recommendation, Mr. Chairman, and we'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
I'm going to need a motion to recommend approval for the National Golf Foundation assessment update. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to recommend approval of the National Golf Foundation assessment update. Any discussion? All those in favor? I'm going to do a roll call again, please.
Yes, sir.
All those in favor will call the vote.
Yes, sir. Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson, Jr.
Aye.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Aye.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Aye.
Commissioner Mark Williams.
Aye.
Mr. Tripp Tollison.
Aye.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Aye.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Aye.
Sir, it's unanimous.
Great. Motion carries. And let's see. I want to get an update on projects from Noel, if you can do that for us, please.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Wilkerson.
Thank you.
A few months ago, I gave a project update, but we dealt into the details of some of these projects. And this go around, I kind of wanted to concentrate on schedules and some other details to address. We have an airport terminal building that's in process. We had a kickoff meeting in November, and just a couple weeks ago, we had a programming and RFP development meeting with GDOT Intermodal and Pond, who is our airport engineer. And just as some background, we're required by GDOT Intermodal to have a airport engineer on retainer year-round, and through a RFP process several years ago, we selected Pond because of the breadth of their expertise that they had. And We should have a design-build RFP available in March, and we will move forward with that in April to put the RFP out on the street, and the program delivery is going to be design-build. And the reason why we're doing that is to try to consolidate timeline and to save some cost and to be able to value engineer as we go along. And we felt that was important because we're limited by the FAA rules as to where this terminal goes and how big it can be. And there's a tight window we have to squeeze through, so having a design-build contractor would benefit us. And I have to give a lot of credit to Mr. Kruger for this project because of the pressure he put on GDOT Intermodal last year when it was recognized that they had made a mistake and made us refund $171,000 of JIA funds back to GDOT Intermodal for the fuel farm. And Mr. Kruger, you were instrumental in putting enough pressure on them where they decided to say that if we use this $171,000 as matching funds, they would add to it another $500,000 to make this project possible. So this project is possible because of the pressure you apply, Mr. Kruger, and we're grateful for that. The public safety complex, Jones alluded to $100,000 in site work. We're going to try to continue a timeline to keep some momentum going and to make it more attractive to fund because the site's ready. We have a complete design that was delivered to us in late November. So I have a full set of construction documents that are ready for permitting. So all we need is money and a contractor at this point. But the $100,000 will take us into the site preparation. We'll get the building pad. We'll bring the elevation to where it needs to be and go ahead and get some of the grading and site work done in advance and make it ready for utilities to be brought to the site and get that building pad good and tight and ready. Cliff and his staff, along with conservation, has gone through the tree survey that we've put together, and they are right now vetting the tree survey to look at final siting of the building to try to preserve as many trees as possible. And the EAP for this project through conservation was held last week. So in about a month, we should see some results from that. Campground expansion, the EAP process is complete on that project. And right now we have a contract for our tree protection. They're meeting Cliff and conservation out there this afternoon to go through the tree save, hard fencing that's going to be put around the significant trees that we're trying to protect. And then once the tree protection is in place, we should be able to begin construction in the second quarter of the bathrooms and the site work. And we currently have a local architect that's working on design of the store and the office area that's on the site plans. And we should have that by the third quarter and hopefully under construction and finish this project by first quarter of 2023. So all ready for this time of next year. We're hoping to have this project wrapped up. Another project I wanted to highlight is not a typical JIA project. It's the Marriott Hotel. This project was still outstanding with a punch list that needed to be completed of landscaping. There were some landscaping elements that were on the design development documents that they omitted, and during a routine inspection of landscaping for the CO, Cliff Garin and his intern last summer noted that several elements of landscaping were missing, and we were able to apply pressure and make sure that they followed through with their promise to put the landscaping in that they had had on the drawings. And we're pleased to say that the final elements of this landscaping is going in right now. There was a delay because they wanted to wait for the proper time of year to plant a lot of these elements, such as large palms. So that just took place over the past couple of weeks. It's a market improvement The post and rope to keep people out of the dunes is installed. The muhly grass is installed on the backside, and it really took shape, and it really looks like a completed project now. So we're happy that that this project was completed the way it was drawn and approved by the board. The last project I want to talk about is not necessarily a timeline, but I want to discuss some comments that were brought to the office concerning some sidewalks that had popped up, some of the crossovers on the T streets that we had built on the heels of the revetment project. We were able to make ADA compliant to an overlook that overlooked the ocean. Not that they'd be able to get down the stairs, but it was an ADA compliant ramp to overlook to where the person with mobility issues had program access to the beach and would be able to look out and see the ocean just like any other person. On those ADA specific crossovers, we completed the ADA compliance by installing a sidewalk from the street to the crossover, because on those locations it would not be ADA compliant if you had to take a wheelchair or a mobility scooter or a walker and have to traverse grass and sand to get to the ADA compliant crossover. And at the ends of them, we put in an area for a trash can and a bike rack, and tried to make it neat and tidy to where it looked like it was supposed to be there. We also had some recent developments where guests and potentially residents were taking red bugs and golf carts and driving up the sidewalks and parking them in the middle of the sidewalk and blocking the crossover. So we've ordered some collapsible bollards that we're going to have to install at the end of the sidewalk to make it to where you can get a scooter or a walker or some type of mobility access tool through, but you can't get a golf cart or a red bug through there. So, and we'll add post and rope to try to block that off in the easement to make it just personnel access only. I also want to talk about some damage we had over the weekend. Austin Lane, I don't have a picture of it, but the end of the crossover was undermined, and we had people on site within hours after we found out about it, and it looks like we lost 3 to 4 feet of sand at that location, and it washed out underneath the crossover, and that crossover collapsed and twisted. So that'll have to be rebuilt. We're going to be able to salvage a lot of the material that's there. And this is just part of building a crossover on any part of the beach. I was thinking about, well, what are the other crossovers that we've had damage? Well, almost every crossover that we have on Jekyll Island has some type of alteration or damage to it. And you can start at the south end. Glory used to be ADA ramp, high and dry, and now the end of it is buried in the sand. We had to rebuild Corsair. We've had issues at Great Dunes. We lost a section of Ocean View Beach Park. The Holiday Inn had their crossover destroyed not once but twice. Old crossovers such as King and Dexter have had damage over the years, and the new crossovers are not immune to this. They are built a lot better than the old crossovers, but I don't know that any crossover that's built in accordance with the way the DNR makes you build these things that would be able to withstand losing 4 foot of its foundation and not collapse on itself. So it's an unfortunate thing, but it's Mother Nature, and we're not going to win against Mother Nature. And we will go back and try to rebuild it better. But I'm saying all that with just a kind of a look into the future. At some point, some crossovers may not be able to be maintained. It might not be a good business decision for us to maintain those crossovers. We're rebuilding them constantly. We will make every effort to do that, but alterations of some sort could be years down the road. That would be for somebody else to decide. But the erosion of sand is something we can't stop, and the addition of sand in other areas is something we can't stop either. So building on a natural beach, it comes with those issues, and we work really hard at trying to work within the DNR guidelines, which say you can't use a lot of concrete, you can't use a lot of hardened materials. They make you build it out of wood. I would love to build a concrete staircase down to these things that's bulletproof and impenetrable, but it's not allowed by DNR. So we do take some slight liberties from time to time and use some epoxy-coated rebar to try to reinforce these crossovers. But just like any structure you build, if if Mother Nature wants to take it, it'll take it. So it's unfortunate, and we have our contractor working on it, and we have every intentions to rebuild it in a better manner and hope it is able to withstand future instances.
Mr. Chairman, if I might comment on what Noel just said.
Yes, sir.
An absolute example of having to make adjustments. If you look at Glory Boardwalk, as he said, before Noel got here actually, that was an ADA design boardwalk. It continually was washed out, and finally DNR, even though they had been permitting us to build it back, they said to us, we really think you should look at the design of this and whether or not you can continue to have an ADA crossover here. And so that's the reason we, obviously because of the fact that it continued to get washed out and continued to be a hazard once those boards are washed into the ocean, anyway, that's when we decided to change the design of it, and that's the reason it's now not ADA compliant at the end. But that's what Noel's talking about is we keep trying and keep going back and keep trying to make sure that what is being placed there is going to last. But it's tough, and
Yep.
it's expensive as well.
For sure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Let's see. Noel's report. Jones?
Yes, sir. If there are no comments or questions on Noel's report, I'll be glad to cover 2 or 3 things right quickly for you from my report. First, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce someone who's in the audience today who we expect to join us on February the 1st, and that is Zach Harris. Zach, if you'll stand up and wave. Zach is going to be our in-house legal counsel, and today, obviously, we're operating without in-house counsel, but so we've tried to keep the agenda not very legal today as far as a lot of legal issues. So Zach, we look forward to having you with us, and looks like you've got a special guest with you today, Zach. Well, we're glad Nicholas is with us, so we'll look forward to having you with us next month. Also, Mr. Chairman, as we're recognizing a couple of people, I think it's important for board members to know that yet again, Mr. Tollison, Trip Tollison, has been recognized by Georgia Trend magazine as one of the 100 most influential Georgians. Trip, congratulations to you.
You're here.
Thank you. They, I guess, ran short on awardees or something, but thank you.
Oh, that's great.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of other things. Looking at golf improvements, anything that's been discussed as far as trees on the golf course, that sort of thing, we're very mindful of any activity that we undertake to make certain that it's not an activity that would have to be readdressed in the future based on whatever ultimate golf improvement plan the board approves. With that said, let me also note that the archaeological study, the draft of that has been forwarded to the Historic Preservation Division of the state, and we'll wait for their comments, and then hopefully we'll have a report back to you even as soon as the next meeting. Also related to that, once we have the various components coming together, including the assessment by the National Golf Foundation, we will take all of those items and plan to have a work session with you in order to come forward with a golf improvement schedule and finalize some recommendations there for you. So hopefully that can happen by June of this year. In your folders, in your blue folders today, there is an article that I would highlight under my series of disappointing destinations. It's actually about St. Augustine and the lure of holiday lights. And I have a son who lives in St. Augustine, and so my wife and I were down there visiting on Saturday, and I can tell you that St. Augustine was a happening place this weekend. And not only a holiday weekend, but also their Nights of Light, of Lights continues through the 1st of February. And so it's really, it's very crowded, and there's some issues that we definitely don't want to experience. And in this particular article, they talk about that they're probably not putting their best foot forward at this point in time. And that's exactly what we don't want to happen. And there's a statement in this article about better balance. And I think that it's important for you to know that in light of everything we do, I think most board members know that we constantly have critique sessions. And so, for instance, we have one scheduled in early February to look at Holly Jolly Jekyll and all of the various components and issues there. And I can tell you one item there that will already be changing, and that is we will not be doing fireworks on a Saturday night during Holly Jolly in the future, because obviously Saturday nights are very crowded as far as people coming over to enjoy the lights. So we'll be looking at issues ourselves to try and avoid some of the things that we know are not good. At a recent meeting, I suppose the last meeting, your December meeting, you approved for a new group to purchase Newcastle, to purchase the Holiday Inn lease.
Yep.
And they were going to engage in an unusual investing process, at least unusual for us, in that they were using CrowdStreet investing. And they then conducted a webinar on the 17th of December. And you can actually go on the CrowdStreet site, their website, and you can actually pull up the Holiday Inn webinar, which was presented. I actually did listen to some of that live and then listen to it, the remainder of it later. I know that there have been investors. I have not gotten a report from them as of this morning. I checked just a few minutes ago to see how many investors or the amount. But anyway, so we'll be very interested in how that continues. And actually, one other item I wanted to bring forward, Mr. Chairman, is you know that we have residential licenses that are required of each property owner on Jekyll Island who chooses to lease out their homes. And these residential leases not only are important to just make sure that what is called for in the lease, as far as if they're supposed to have 3 TVs, that they have 3 TVs, but also the public safety components are very serious. And I would just like to report that as a result of a recommendation and a finding of a home in the Bliss Lane area, that our fire department noted that there needed to be a fire extinguisher, and as it turned out, there was a fire later at that home, and that fire extinguisher was credited with preventing the fire from spreading throughout. And so that's one reason that these licenses are important. And during last calendar year, there were 41 inspections, random inspections of residential leases that were conducted. And when I say random, I don't mean that they're just on the spot. In other words, the owner gets notice, but at the same time, they're just randomly drawn. And we'll continue that process because we think it's very important. And that's just one example of why those kind of inspections we think are very, very important. Mr. Chairman, that's my report today.
Thank you so much. I'll be brief, but Mr. Kruger and I are both aircraft carrier sailors, and believe me, when it comes to all levels of safety, I'm very pleased to see what staff is doing. Let me just quickly comment about Zach Harris coming on board as legal counsel. I knew Zach at the state capitol, and I've got an excellent attorney, and I'm very appreciative that he's going to be joining us. The other thing, I have to tell y'all, this was not an easy Christmas, but came over for Holly Jolly. I had some neighbors bring me over, and one of them, the lady in particular, her mom had passed away, and we came over Christmas evening. My goodness, what a magical place. And I cannot say enough good things, wonderful things about the staff. You know, it's not easy working on a holiday. Between the White House and the military, I've you know, Navy ships do not stop for Christmas and so forth, so I understand. But I gotta tell you what, I mean, why I love Team Jekyll so much, I was watching those people, and they were so excited to be ambassadors for Jekyll, and smiling and reaching out, and oh my goodness, I just can't say enough good things, and I thank every one of them, but also thank each and every one of you in management at all levels. I mean, from the parking gates on, I mean, oh my goodness, what people really loved being ambassadors and reaching out and greeting. I watched it, and I watched a number of the families that, you know, got out of their cars, were walking, and I was observing them. And so I thank Team Jekyll. You all did just great. We need a break. We'll now open the floor for any public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person. Do we have any comments? Okay, then I will now open the January 18th, 2022 board meeting of the Jekyll Island Authority. As you all have noticed, you can see why I chaired ethics all those years at the state capitol. My late boss at the Coca-Cola company, Klaus Halle, Klaus used to say I was the best German he ever met. We're going to call the roll.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Joseph B. Wilkinson Jr.
Here.
Mr. Bob Kruger.
Here.
Mr. Bill Gross.
Here.
Commissioner Mark Williams.
Here.
Mr. Trip Tollison.
Here.
Mr. Glenn Willard.
Here.
Mr. Dale Atkins.
Here.
Ms. Joy Birch Meeks and Dr. Buster Evans are absent. Sir, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the December 14, 2021 board meeting?
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the December 14, 2021 board meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any like sign? Motion carries. All right. This one, we need a motion. Excuse me. We've received a Finance Committee recommendation to approve the fiscal year 2022 operating budget adjustments. Any further discussion before I vote to accept the recommendation? All right, no motion or second is needed. Call for the vote. All in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Motion carries. The board members have received a Finance Committee recommendation to approve fiscal year 2022 capital equipment and projects request. Any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? No motion or second is needed. All in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Motion carries. The consideration of market analysis for Jekyll Island Buccaneer site. Board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to approve the market analysis completed by RCLCO for the Jekyll Island Buccaneer site. Is there any further discussion before a vote to adopt the resolution? Okay, no motion or second is needed. All in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Request for proposal for number 368, or RFP 368, the Jekyll Island Amphitheater market analysis. Board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to approve RFP 368 for the Jekyll Island Amphitheater market analysis. Is there any further discussion before a vote to accept the recommendation? I do not need a second or a motion. All in favor will signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. The National Golf Foundation Assessment Update. Board members have received a committee of the whole recommendation to approve the National Golf Foundation Assessment Update. Is there any further discussion before a vote to adopt the resolution? No motion or second is needed. All in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign? The motion carries. We'll open the floor for any public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for each person. None. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for the vote. And we had said that if there's no objection, that we are adjourned. I don't hear any objection. And it is 11:05 a.m. Thank you all very, very much. And we are adjourned at 11:05 a.m. Yeah, I know you like that one.
I'm gonna make you excited.
Joe, thank you for your kind comments.
Good to see you
I'm
guys.
in it.
Good to see you.